What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to continue our coverage over the S.W.O.R.D event, and we pick up with Chapter 8 of this event, and we pick up with cable number, I want to say 5. But cable number 5, and this is going to be the next chapter in the S.W.O.R.D event. Now, in the early chapters of S.W.O.R.D, we basically got to the point where Arakko is going to fight against COPPA. On top of that, you have our X-Men characters going out there and getting their swords to get ready for this big war. Now, when it comes to cable number 5, it's really not more of Cable getting his sword. It's setting up things to come after the S.W.O.R.D event. And you see what I mean as we go through this book. But the reason why I say after this event, because before S.W.O.R.D came out, Cable already got his sword in his own solo series. And so it's Marvel kind of setting up things after S.W.O.R.D. But with that being said, I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video. But here we go. Now, getting into cable number 5, we have to remember that Cyclops, Cable, and Jean Grey, they're not on Earth. Right now, they're out in space. And matter of fact, they're on the old base that belonged to S.W.O.R.D. Now, remember, S.W.O.R.D was this organization that Marvel made as a way to protect the Earth from any kind of alien attack. Now, this base has been abandoned, and the big question is, though, why? What happened on the S.W.O.R.D base? Now, of course, when Cable, Cyclops, and Jean Grey arrived, Cable used his sword to stab some kind of orb, and that orb was able to power up the S.W.O.R.D space station. Now, the reason why our heroes are on this space station is because Saturn put the image of that orb in the mind of Cable. And so, of course, Cable came here to figure out why in the world she wanted him to come here for. And so with that, he brought his parents, Cyclops and Jean Grey. Now, when they got here, like I said earlier, they did stab the orb that brought the space station back online. But again, the big question is, though, what happened on the S.W.O.R.D space station? What happened to everyone who was working on the space station? Now, after you had Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Cable split up so that they'll be able to kind of look around the space station even more, you have Cyclops and Cable go alone without Jean Grey to look at different places of the space station to see that they can find any more clues. But while they're walking around, we actually do pick up at the moment where Magic had called Cyclops to tell Cyclops to send Cable back down to Earth. Because if you remember our last video, Magic had called up Cable to tell him that he is part of this crazy war to come between Arakko and COPPA. And of course, we pick up with that moment where she had called Cyclops to tell him to send his son back down to Earth. Now, with that being said, though, you do have Cable and Cyclops finding a lab, and this lab was kind of sealed up very quickly, it seems like. And so you have Cyclops and Cable break open the door that leads into that lab, and when they do, they find something. And of course, you have Cyclops call out to Jean Grey because he wants her to see what they have found. Now, you do have Jean Grey tell Cyclops and Cable to hold on so that she can continue to look for more clues around the space station. Now, with that being said, though, while she's walking around, she does find something. She finds someone, actually. Now, this person that she finds, he basically tells her, why did you turn it back on? Meaning that, why did you turn the space station back on? Because with the space station being offline, everything was okay. But now with you turning everything back on, nothing is okay. We were protecting you guys from whatever got rid of everybody that had worked on this space station. We were attacked by something we could not stop. Now, that right there is very important for this event. Now, with that being said, you do have Jean Grey try to read this person's mind, but when she does, she has a hard time reading his mind. And he tells us that they were trained, the S.W.O.R.D people, they were trained as a way to protect their minds from psychics. But of course he said, no, you want to know what happened here, right? Well, Let me show you what happened here. And so what he does is give her an image of what attacked the S.W.O.R.D base. Now, with this image, we do not get the chance to see it right now, but it's him saying, this is a powerful force. It kills everything in its path. And that right there is kind of concerning. But before Jean Grey is able to continue to talk to this guy, he opens up the space door to basically float in space to kill himself so that he can finally be free. But with Jean Grey seeing that image, she knows what happened to the S.W.O.R.D base. Now, when Jean Grey catches back up with Cyclops and Cable to see what they have found, but to also share what she had found, well, that is the moment they come to find out that Cable and Cyclops found a door. Now, this door does open up, and this gives us our first introduction to a new organization called the S.W.O.R.D. Now, we are going to learn more about this new creation, this new kind of creatures, but apparently they come from a different dimension. But of course, they're here to kind of eat this reality or this dimension. Of course, the main one the X-Men characters are in right now. And so with that being said, you have Cyclops and Jean Grey tell their son Cable to go back to that orb and pull out his sword, because if he does that, the space station goes back offline, which is great, but to also close the door on this new creation called S.W.O.R.D, who could possibly eat everything in his path when it comes to this dimension. And so you have Cable run off while Jean Grey and Cyclops become that power couple to fight against these new kind of creatures. And so while you have Cyclops and Jean Grey fighting against the S.W.O.R.D, you do have Cable trying his best to run back to the orb to basically pull his sword out to depower this space station. And so we do get a moment where it does seem like maybe Cyclops and Jean Grey are possibly going to die because they're trying to basically defend themselves against the S.W.O.R.D, but at the same time make sure that Cable has enough time to pull his sword out to depower the space station. Of course, right when it seems like they're going to lose, Cable is able to pull his sword out, which of course does depower the space station, which means that the S.W.O.R.D can no longer come over into this reality and try to kill it off. And so right now, Cable and Cyclops and Jean Grey can finally breathe, but of course that means Cable must move on to his next mission. And so that is the moment we do see Cable arriving back onto Krakoa to show us that yes, he was one of the characters who is going to be chosen to fight in the war against Arakko, because right now they need all swords on deck. And so that means now you have Magic, Storm, Wolverine, Cypher, and Cable. We're still missing 5 other characters, but for right now we have 5 characters ready for the war against Arakko. And the question is though, who are the other 5 characters to be chosen to fight against the war against Arakko? Now you do have Cyclops and Jean Grey arrive back onto Krakoa as well, where of course you do have Jean Grey and Cyclops talk to Magic with their minds. Now, with that being said though, remember in our last video, Magic had talked to Cyclops about the idea of making plans just in case things do pop off in Otherworld. And so right now, this is Magic saying, I feel like things are going to pop off in Otherworld. So please tell me that you have plans that could basically help us win this war. And of course, it's Cyclops, the Boy Scout. He always has plans. He has plans on plans on plans on plans. Yes, I just did that. But either way though, this is Magic saying, listen, Cyclops, we need everything you have in your head to make sure we win this war. And so with that being said, that plan is going to be very important for the later chapters of this event. But with that being said, I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video. And if you do, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.